All right, here we go. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Mastering Developer Tools with Rootstock. My name is Olia. I lead developer experience at RootstockLabs. Rootstock is the longest running Bitcoin sidechain that uses proof of work with merge mining with Bitcoin. What makes Rootstock special is that it is fully EVM compatible. So if you've ever deployed any contracts written in Solidity or used any of the Solidity toolchain, you are pretty much already a Rootstock developer. What makes Rootstock even better and a better offering for developers is that we've got a bunch of very, very useful integrations and developer tools that you can use. Thirdweb is one of them. And then today we have wonderful Joe from Thirdweb showing us what they have to offer to developers. So hi, Joe. It's great to have you here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. I'm Joe. I'm a solutions engineer from Thirdweb. And it's my job every day to, talk to developers, talk to individuals who are using the Thirdweb stack and just help them be successful. So part of that is along with Rootstock on the chain. And yeah, I'm so happy and excited to be here and talk a little bit about that product.
Fantastic. I'm really excited about this chat, and I'm a big fan of Thirdweb myself, so I'm looking forward to this. All right, so let's get started. What is Thirdweb?
Yeah, Thirdweb, is a full stack development platform. And what exactly that means is that developers who are building on blockchain, who are building in Web3, there's three main components that every developer needs, right? They need a way to be able to connect users. They need a front end aspect. They need a way to interact with contracts. They need a way to create contracts, edit contracts, and even upload NFTs or ERC20 tokens to these contracts, right? And then finally, they need some sort of backend management. They need a way to handle a lot of throughput for transactions. They need a way to handle gas management, automatic retries, all of these things. And so with Thirdweb, a developer has all of these tools in one place, right? Not only that, but all of our toolkits are native, meaning you don't have to wrap your mobile application into a web app. So your applications will run faster and more performant because of our native SDK. So we're full stack in both senses that we have a full end suite of tools, end to end, front end, back end, and contracts, but as well as native platform support so that your applications, your businesses scale performantly and on native SDKs, which is a really, really great help.
Fantastic. Great answer there. A lot of detail. One follow-up question I have after that. What knowledge do I already need to have to start building with?
Yeah, so a couple different paths on Thirdweb, right? If you're a non-developer and you just want to be able to use a UI to start developing your applications, your businesses, you can absolutely do that, right? Thirdweb has something called our dashboard, and through this dashboard, you can specify things like what kind of contracts you want to create, how you want to handle NFT mints, things like that. However, if you are a little bit more developer focused, you can use our SDKs and our toolkits to create your applications. So we have things like I mentioned earlier, our connect components for front end, right, for users to log in, right? And these are already built out components. You don't have to do any sort of customization. It's a simple connect component call that you do. And then that's it. You're good to go. You can start with your users logging into your application. If you have a little bit more experience, all of this is totally customizable. You can customize the look, the feel, and the workflow for these components. So we really do cater to, anywhere from no experience to, hey, I've been a seasoned developer in blockchain for the past 10 years, right?
Fantastic. That's great. Right, and one question I have before we jump into the demo is about, so I know there is a fantastic developer community around third web technology. How can one be part of that community and join in, and where can one seek support from peer builders?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of different avenues that we have. One is our Discord. Discord.gg/thirdweb is ours. We also have, folks in your wonderful Discord as well in the Rootstock Discord. So if you have any questions, we can also help out there. And then, if sometimes off hours or holidays kick in, you can always submit a ticket request. All of our support people are developers. All of our people are trained on the Thirdweb stack. So they'll be able to answer any question that you might have. And that's at thirdweb.com/support. or any sort of tickets that someone might want to open up for us.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's maybe have a look and dive into the actual implementation.
Yeah, cool. So real quick, I'm going to share my screen, go through a little bit about what front end, back end, and on chain means. And then from there, I'll go ahead and go into a little bit about that implementation. And I like to do it this way because it really helps frame what Thirdweb actually supports. So let me go ahead and share my screen here, turn on this slideshow. So as I said, Thirdweb, full stack, open source Web3 development platform. We have front end, back end, and on chain. And so what does it mean with front end? So these are things like wallet connectors. We have in-app wallets. We have our contract SDKs. We have payments. So if individuals are looking for fiat on ramps, right, which is a huge bonus that apps are using these days. This means that you don't have to have your users go out to other providers. They don't have to leave your application. They can stay within your ecosystem for a longer period of time, which means that you guys are actually building better applications, right? Anytime a user leaves your application, that's an opportunity that they don't come back. So payments through Thirdweb's fiat on ramper is actually a huge bonus to help keeping your users on your application for longer. Then we have things like ecosystem wallets. Ecosystem wallets are our branded wallet where you guys can build out your own wallet infra. So, you are used to seeing things like, let's log in with MetaMask, let's log in with Base Wallet, right? Um, Instead, now you can say, I want to log in with Rootstock wallet. I want to log in with Developer 1 wallet, Developer 2 wallet, right? These are branded wallets that now your users can see and trust and associate with your brand. And now anytime they log into any application, with that wallet, they have the exact same wallet address. They have the exact same assets. They have the exact same ability to interact on chain, no matter the application. So really huge update there, and a powerful tool, especially for things like gaming platforms, DeFi apps. If you're jumping between different applications in a DeFi space, you can access the exact same wallet. So really powerful tools there. And then on chain, as I mentioned, are our contracts. So these are both audited. And we came out with something called modular contracts. So modular contracts are really helpful, especially for things that require you to add or remove functionality from a contract after you've already deployed it. So, a lot of things with Solidity, and this goes back to talking about what kind of experience someone needs, right? So if you're a Solidity dev, you know that once you put a contract on chain, it's immutable. There's no way for you to kind of edit or update that contract's functions or infrastructure. With our modular contracts, that's no longer the case. You can actually put out a contract and say, I want to remove the ability to mint later on. This is really useful for people making ERC20 tokens. And as they put these tokens up on some of these sites for users to consume, there's usually a scanning process that happens. And this scanning process will actually look at things like, okay, do you still have ownership of that contract? Most of these scanning sites, they actually want you to remove that, right? Do you still have the ability to mint additional tokens on this contract? Again, they want you to have the ability to remove that functionality because one, it helps reassure your users that, hey, you're not going to inflate the supply, you're not going to mess with any of that stuff. And two, you're not going to change any of the rule sets around that token, right? So modular contracts actually let you remove that mintable functionality. You don't come up with false positives on these contracts any longer. All these contracts are deployed again through the CLI or through our dashboard UI, which I'll go through in a little bit here. You don't have to have any sort of coding knowledge to walk you through the whole way and in each step in that process. Really useful. And then finally, backend, as I mentioned, this is all about gasless transactions, secure backend wallets, which you can use to fund your application. So you can have a backend wallet, fund it with some currency, and use that to transact on behalf of users. You can use that to pay for any sort of transactions that your user might not initiate, but you yourself want to do on behalf of them. Or you can do things like automated gas and nonce management. If a transaction fails, the Thirdweb engine, which is our backend service, will actually retry that transaction by increasing the gas and nonce natively. So the developer, or even the user don't have to worry about any of that. This happens automatically on the backend, and it will keep going and retrying until the transaction. This is a huge breakthrough for people who are scaling up their applications. And this means you can do hundreds of thousands of transactions. You're no longer limited to one at a time. You can put thousands of transactions through Thirdweb engine and it just works. Really, really powerful. It's all API based. You don't have to learn a new coding language. So if you know how to do API endpoint fetch requests, Thirdweb engine is nothing new for you. So that's kind of like a little deep dive on that. What I want to show on this kind of demo is how do we get started, right? So I'm a brand new developer. I start using Thirdweb. How does that process work? So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. This is our login. Thirdweb.com redirects you to a login. As you can see, we have a whole host of options for you to log in. And not only that, but what you see here is also the same components that we offer within our SDK. So if you look at this and you're like, oh, this looks really nice, I kind of want to use this. This is our default component. So you can actually mimic this exact same flow through your SDK. So first step is integrating with Thirdweb, and then on the Rootstock chain is we need to create an account on Thirdweb. We're going to be able to log in through this. And so you can do it a couple different ways. You can either do social logins through like you see here, Gmail, Apple, Facebook, straight email addresses, phone numbers, passkeys. For this instance, I'm actually going to just use my MetaMask wallet, and it's going to ask me to sign in. I'm going to pop up a confirmation on my MetaMask, which I know you can't see. I'm going to go ahead and sign that, and it's going to bring me into my dashboard. So this is your Thirdweb dashboard, and so this is going to be your kind of gateway into Thirdweb and everything that you want to start using it for. So, for example, we've created our account. That's it, right? All we had to do was log in, and an account is created for us. We don't have to fill in any paperwork. We don't have to do anything too crazy. Next up is going to be our API key. So for things that require any sort of development, right? Maybe you're building an app, maybe you're building a web app or a native app, you're going to need an API key. So this is very common through the industry. The way to do that is you're going to go here to this projects tab. And here in this projects tab, we're just going to add a new project. And this project is going to create both a client ID and a secret key. So let's demo as my project name. And then we're going to do here is for testing purposes, I'm just going to do allow all domains. When you guys do this setup, you're going to do things like, hey, I only want localhost for testing, or your actual domain when you start putting these out into production, right? So this is how you control who has access and who can call on behalf of your API key. So be sure to use this allowed domain section for that extra layer of security. Don't be like me and allow all domains. This is just for testing purposes. Make sure you guys actually specify what domains you want to be allowed on this API key. We're going to go ahead and hit create. This is a warning that, hey, currently I have it for everyone, and that's fine. I've set it up that way for this demo. So here's kind of the two API keys that, or key pair that you're going to see, right? One is the client ID. And again, this client ID is okay to have front facing. It doesn't matter that everyone's going to be able to see it. That's totally fine. The secret key down here is what you want only for your backend stuff. So remember, guys, copy the secret key, keep it safe. Once you have it here, you're not going to be shown it again. So you'll have to create a new project if you ever lose it. So just copy it, keep it in a safe place. Again, don't show this on your front end. This is for back end instances only. So if you're doing anything your back end transactions. So if, for example, you're making any API calls, if you're doing anything purely not front facing, then that's when you would use your secret key. If for anything front facing like logins, right, you want to use your client ID instead. 90% of the use cases that you guys are going to use, it's going to be the client ID versus your secret key. So we're going to go ahead and just say, hey, I've gotten my secret key. I'm going to confirm it. Go ahead and complete. And so here in our dashboard, we see now that we have our project, right? We can even click on it. And then it'll ask us, hey, let's get started, right? Take you over to your docs. We can start walking through and look at different things like how do you connect users? How do you start working on contracts? How do you start working on insights? All of this great stuff. So let's kind of walk through it and see what it takes. Now that I've have my account, what if I wanted to create a contract, right? So here under contracts, you'll actually see a whole list of contracts that you've created and deployed on the network. When you first start, this is going to be empty, but what you can do is you can click on this button here, deploy contract, and you have a few options available to you. So you'll have like our popular contracts. All of the contracts that we offer are fully audited, and then they don't need any sort of development from you. So some of our popular things are like, hey, NFT drops, these are going to be your ERC 721. Edition drops are going to be your ERC 1155s, and then tokens are your standard ERC, right? So we have all of these. In addition, we have things like marketplaces that you guys can do. If you guys want to do your own smart accounts, we have account factories that you guys can deploy as well through this. So very, very popular contracts that you can do here. And then we even have the modular contracts of all of these. So as I mentioned earlier, modular contracts are where you can add or remove functionality and deploy those through the UI as well. So for this demo, what I did is actually just went through an NFT drop, which is our ERC 721s. And then what we have here is a little bit of information about it. You can read about what this contract is, some popular use cases, and if it seems like a good fit for you, you can go ahead and deploy it. On the left-hand side here, you'll go through things like what are the functions we have on this contract, what are the write functions, what are the read functions. You have a little bit of code snippets as well that you can look at to see how to get or interact with some of these contracts. So everything you do is going to have a client ID. How do you get this contract? And then you can, from there, you can ask, well, what function do I want to work with? Maybe I want to be able to burn, right? This is a code snippet on how to burn it. So we'll go through that a little bit more as we deploy. So after you found a contract that you like, go ahead and click on this deploy now button. And it's going to ask you to fill in some metadata information. This metadata is not for the NFT itself, but for the contract. So for example, here on the name, if I wanted to name it Rootstock demo, right? I can do that. I can add an image, a symbol, and then I can go in through and fill out the rest of this information. Like, where do I want my primary sales? What wallet address? What about my royalties, platform fees, things like that, right? And then you can even choose your chain. So right now it's specified for Rootstock. From the testnet, say you wanted to go to deploy it on mainnet, you can look through our explorer of all available networks. You can switch it over to mainnet, and then you can go ahead and deploy on that network as well. So for this one, it's going to be our testnet. I'm going to go ahead and click on deploy now. And what it's going to do is it's going to start saying deploying contract. It's going to bring up a transaction on my MetaMask. I'm actually going to reject this one because I already have a contract deployed for Rootstock. So again, this is kind of the flow on how to deploy a contract. Once it's already deployed, go over here to my contracts. Once it's already deployed, you can start working with it on the UI as well. Some very common things that a lot of people will be doing is, hey, I've deployed a contract. I need to upload some NFTs or I need to upload some currencies for it. How do I do that? Again, this is all UI based. You can absolutely do this through the CLI, but one, this is faster. You don't have to worry about any sort of syntax errors or mistakes. So I highly recommend people go through the UI and absolutely do the CLI. However, just, this experience is a little bit faster, easier for you to go through. So here on the left-hand side, for uploading NFTs, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on NFTs. It's going to show us this screen where we can see our supply, claim supply, and unclaimed supply. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to do a single upload. What you can do is you can either upload in batches. So you can upload, say, 100 NFTs at the time. You can fill out all your metadata for it and do it in that route. Very simple. It uses a JSON file. It uses a route for all of your images. But for this demo, I'm just going to do a single upload. I'm going to name it Dino1. And then here what we can do is we can actually, asking me to, I clicked on upload media, and it's actually popped up a screen for me to figure out which image I want to upload for this. So I'm just going to pick a really simple dino egg for it. And I can do things like, okay, what's the description? An egg, right? Attributes, I'm just, you can do whatever you, here I'm just going to do animal. And then I'm just going to say, hey, the value is an egg. right? Again, you can put in any sort of attributes and trait values that you want here. And we have some advanced options if you want to have things like background color that OpenSea directly supports, external URLs. If you've already uploaded NFT metadata, you can do that through this image URL instead of uploading it through this media tab. Same thing with the animation URL. If you have already uploaded a URL for your animation, you can set that here. These are usually IPFS URLs, URIs rather, or if you have the URL for it, make sure that you are specifying your domain that can access that. So same thing with logging in with your API keys, if you remember earlier, except now we're doing it with our URL. So we're gonna go ahead and click Lazy Mint. A little bit of background here. It's gonna pop up a confirmation on my MetaMask. Go ahead and confirm it. And so when you lazy mint an NFT, what we're actually doing is we're preparing all this information without minting it directly to the blockchain. And so this is going to do a couple of things for you. One, it's going to save you on gas fees, right? So Rootstock is super, super performant and efficient in its gas already. But as you start putting many of these NFTs up there, it can be a little bit costly depending on your collection size. So by lazy minting, what it's going to do is it's going to prepare all this information without actually minting on the blockchain. So what that means is if you were to go to the Rootstock Explorer, which I can actually share right now, if you're going to go to the Rootstock Explorer or look at any of the on-chain interactions, you'll see that not a lot of you'll see that it's not actually existing on the chain. That's one thing. Here you can see, for example, we've uploaded that NFT. We've actually updated our supply, right? So now we have a total supply of 1, unclaimed of 1 right now. And we can see all the information that we just put in, right? So we have the image, we have the name of it, we have the description. If I click on it, you can still see things like, hey, what's our token URI? As we uploaded this to the IPFS, right? What about metadata, right? You can actually come in here and update metadata on this NFT directly through the UI. Again, you don't have to do any code. You don't have to work with any contracts. This makes it really simple and easy for anyone building on Rootstock. Come through, check out their contracts, and start messing around with them. After this section, we have options things like claim conditions. And these claim conditions are really important in that these specify claim phases. And a claim phase is how you allow your people to interact with this contract, with NFT specifically, right? So we can do things like, hey, we want to open it up to the public. That means anyone and everyone can start minting, interacting with it. We want to have an allow list where with the public, so we have a certain group of people who can maybe mint at a lower cost or maybe mint additional NFTs outside of the public. Want to do allow list only, or want to do only the owner can claim an NFT. Right now, I'm just gonna do public. I don't mind that anyone and everyone can mint this. We can name these phases. We can say, hey, when do you want this phase to start? So you can actually start it in the future. One thing to note here is that only one phase at a time and it can be started or turned on. So what this means is that if you were to have an additional phase after this, the additional phase will begin as soon as, or rather the first phase will end as soon as the second phase begins. So always remember that with claim phases, you can only have one phase at a time. In each phase, you can do things like, hey, well, how many NFTs do you want to drop? You can specify either an unlimited amount, an actual amount within each phase. Maybe you don't want to do them in batches of 100. You can specify that with your multiple phases. How much do you want to charge for each NFT, right? So here it's actually saying, okay, it read the currency of Rootstock and said, okay, we're going to use our native currency. We can create custom ERC20 tokens and have it pay in that currency as well. You can do things like, okay, well, how many NFTs do you want minted per wallet, right? So this is for each user. You want the limit unlimited? Do you want to limit by 1 to all of those options are available here in this section. And once you're done here, so I'm just going to actually just put, this is going to start at this time. Go ahead and save it. Make sure you save the phase. This is very important. This is going to be an on-chain transaction. And once you confirm it within your wallet, if you're logging in with socials, you're not going to actually see that pop up, but with your EOAs, you will. Once you confirm all of these changes, it's going to pop up that on-chain transaction. You're going to go ahead and sign it, click yes. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow anyone to interact with your contract in accordance to the phase you set. So right now, this currently active phase it's going to set at December 2nd, 10:33 my time, Central Time. Unlimited, it's free, and anyone can sign up, right? So now that's all our contract support. We've done all of the setup for running on contracts. And so how do we do things now like logging in on YouTube? So one thing I want to share with you all here is our playground for this tab. And so this is what we call our Thirdweb playground. I'll zoom in a little bit here so we can all see it a little bit better. And so this is our Thirdweb playground. And here's where you guys can kind of test around, interact with some of our products and some of our solutions helping you build out your application. So one thing we need to do is we need users to be able to sign in, right? So how do we do that? Well, let's click on the sign in button. We have a whole host of options for you. You can either do things like signing in through our connect component. And this is, as you see here, it's very similar to what we just saw in our login layout, right? We can specify things like, I want users to be able to log in through Twitch. I want them to be able to log in through Line or GitHub. And you can see that it's actually making those changes. But if I don't want to allow in-app wallets, I can turn it off and we can only have our traditional EOA wallets, right? And an additional kind of fun thing to do here is this code button. If I were to click on this code button, we can actually see what it takes to get that modal into your app. So guess what? Now, maybe I'm not the best developer. Maybe I'm not the greatest. I come through this app. I come through the playground. I can create the exact modal that I want. And then I can use this code snippet, copy it, put it into my application, and we're good to go. We have our connection. And as you see here, for example, GitHub, right? Say I want to get rid of GitHub. Boom, it's gone. Some of these wallets, maybe I want to get rid of Coinbase. Boom, it's gone here, right? Like add it back in. There it is. So you can actually copy and paste this code snippet directly into your application to start getting a feel for how to log in users. Now, a couple of keynotes here. These imports, to kind of tell you what they mean, create Thirdweb client. Every application you use with Thirdweb is going to have a client. Now, this client is going to be utilizing your API key pair that we created when we started a project earlier, right? When we first logged in, we have that key pair. Remember, it gave us a client ID and it gave us a secret key. We're going to use that client ID as we create our client, and we're going to specify it here. Remember, I said your client ID is okay to be front-facing. It's actually meant to be front-facing. So you can actually specify your client ID here on your connect component, even though it's a client operation, meaning that your users will have access to it. It's okay to showcase that ID on the front end. So create your client, put in your client ID, and then you're going to specify, well, what's our list of wallets that we want to support, right? And it's going to be either through social logins, it's going to be either through your EOA. We have other things like custom auth that we offer, so you can actually bring in any authentication method you want, whether it's JWT tokens or you have your own endpoints that you want to hit, verify a user's login method. You can use any auth for that. And then once you have that, you can use our connect button components. These are components that are already built out. These are already styled for you. These are already ready to go. All you have to do is all them within your application, and then you're good to go. You have a good modal that anyone would be happy to use. And you can do things like, hey, maybe you want to get rid of Powered by Thirdweb. You can do that. If you want to change the appearance of it, you want to change like sponsoring gas fees. This is a huge one, right? So go back to the code here and look at sponsoring gas fees. See 3337 and account abstraction. is all about how do I create smart wallets, and then I can use these smart wallets for things like sponsoring gas. I can add session keys so that I can have other wallets transact on behalf of this smart account. I can do things like add gas abstraction, smart accounts, session keys. I can do things like, hey, maybe I want a user to have a smart account anytime they log in with a EOA account, right? All of these kind of abstracting away of Web3 for your Web2 users is one way to do it with smart accounts. And again, code wise, let's say you're not very code savvy, right? And you want to be able to abstract away gas fees. If I were to turn this on, you see that it actually turns into this very, very small code snippet, right? Account abstraction, we specify the chain. Here would be rootstock 31 for the testnet, 30 for the mainnet. And where do you get that information, by the way? So one way is through our chain list here on thirdweb.com/chainlist. I searched Rootstock and we have both our testnet and mainnet information up for you. See things like if I were to click into the testnet, you can see we have our faucet if you need any funds for that. We have things like web links to the websites that we have. We have token information, or RPC endpoints that you guys can utilize for Rootstock, the Explorer for Rootstock, and then you can even click on any of these to have them taken directly to our docs, right? So you can look at our docs on contracts, the Connect SDK, engine, all of these great things for Rootstock specifically. And so here again, kind of abstraction, 3 lines of code, and that's all it takes, right? So without it, this is what it looks like, and with it, that's what it looks like, right? Very small, very low impact. It keeps your code easy to read, easy to maintain. So for seasoned developers, they love that. For new developers, it's easy to get up and running with it. Super, super simple on the code aspect. So that's signing in, right? That's how you come in and create a very engaging and high entry point for your users. A couple different things that we can do from here, right? So now we can do like, okay, my user logs in. They've created an account. What can they do with it? Well, one is we talked about fiat on-ramps, right? We talked about options for your users to be able to onboard funds to your application. What does that look like? That looks like Thirdweb Pay. And so let me actually log out of here. You can see the full flow on what that looks like. So here, let's say, for example, one user to come in, top up their wallet. They can actually connect their wallet here. Again, that same pop-up that we can configure, you guys can specify exactly how you want it to look. We're going to go ahead and let MetaMask come in and work with it. We can do things like, okay, I want someone to log in and I want them to be able to have funds on my application. How do I do that? Well, with this, we have a couple different options. You can either do it through that connect button that we showed earlier. You can do it through a standalone embed. Again, this is why I love the playground. You can see exactly the code needed to get that up and running. And then you can see what it looks like on the right-hand side on what the user experience for that is, right? So for here, say I wanted to look at a network, right? We can choose any networks here. We can specify some networks that we look at. We can look at tokens, right? What are some tokens on that network that we want to be able to onboard for our users? And then if we were to continue, we can do things like, well, what wallet do we want to pay with? Or do we want to be able to allow users with credit cards to be able to onboard into our apps? If we were to pay with credit card, user will see something like this. They'll see a route for what it takes to get to those funds, and then they can continue on. Again, all within your app. You're not opening other windows. You're not sending them to other applications. This means that the chances of them leaving and your rate of conversion through this is increasing, which means, hey, your app is more successful. You guys are making more money. And through these transactions, Thirdweb will actually charge a 1% fee, but you, the developer, gets 70% of that. So for every dollar that goes through, you guys are making 70 cents. That is a huge, huge benefit for you guys to be able to ensure you guys have proper runway as you build your applications, as you're building your businesses on Rootstock, as you guys are building these applications on Rootstock. You guys can actually monetize your users in another way to ensure that you guys are able to continue developing for your application. Very, very big. I think we're one of the only other products of this kind that do something like that. So that's one way, right? This is just topping up. This is to get them in their wallet. What about things like, hey, I want to sell stuff, right? You can use Thirdweb Pay for that as well. You can create things like, if you want to sell physical goods, you can do direct payments. So if a user comes in, has a token, they can specify what wallet address the user needs to input and where those funds will go. Very, 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 very useful. If you have things like, well, I don't have physical goods, I'm selling NFTs, I'm selling, passes, I'm selling access passes, I'm selling memberships. How do I connect it to a transaction, right? We have that as well. You can do things like using our extensions, and extensions are just, let me abstract away all of the complexity of building a transaction, and let me just do a method call. So in this example, we actually have something called claim to extension. And what we're doing here is, okay, I, as the developer, want my user to be able to claim this NFT, whether it's going to be a membership pass, whether I'm going to use it as a standalone NFT, doesn't matter. And once they go through the payment process, then they can get the NFT. So that's a lot of logic already. That's a lot of if statements, right? Like if purchased, if the transaction's successful, if the user has enough funds, right? That's a lot of logic. And in order to encompass all of that logic, it's a simple extension called claim to. So if you follow this code snippet, what this means is, hey, the user comes in, they see this UI, they log in, right? They can choose their payment method, again, other wallet, credit cards, what have you. And once that transaction is successful, then that NFT is sent to the user. Very simple, right? Like this is the power of Thirdweb and its full stack capabilities, is that not only are you guys able to do this on web apps, not only are you guys able to do this on some SDKs that we might not support, such as Python, you can use Engine to perform these transactions as well. Very powerful. All of this is up to you and really here for your benefit and for the developer to be able to support all of these use cases. So again, through Pay, we went through just simple top-ups on a user's wallet. We went through the ability to sell physical goods and dictate where you want that money to end up in, which wallet address. And here we went through transactions. You want to sell digital goods, and you can do that. You can specify how those funds are managed, right? Do this as well. So that is a tiny bit about what are possible through Thirdweb on the Connect side of it. We went through a little bit of contracts, right? How you can set those up and how you can start working with them. We went through a little bit about where you can find information on the mainnet and testnet. Also, now I think the next step is, okay, I've done contracts, right? What about setting up a project, right? What does that look like? Real quick, I'm going to go here and share this screen with you. This is a list of SDKs that we natively support. This isn't all of them. What we actually have is our backend SDK here, Engine, that I talked a little bit about. An Engine is going to be your essentially entryway into blockchain management without any SDK. Again, this is your simple API fetch request. This is your, hey, if I know how to make an API call, I know how to transact on the blockchain. Very simple. If you look at this stuff and you go, oh, I recognize that, right? I know that's an endpoint URL. I know headers. I know I'm going to get a response on that. This is traditional, highly performant, highly secure best practices Thirdweb engine. And you guys can take advantage through it without having to learn any new languages, without having to learn any new SDK. And so this image here is what I think personifies Engine the best, right? You have your app front end, you have your back end, and then your back end will actually make call your cloud hosted Engine instance. So Engine sits in this kind of layer between your backend and the blockchain. An engine will actually perform the transaction onto the blockchain. And as you see here, we have wallets within Engine. These are our backend wallets that we can use to transact on behalf of users. This means that your users don't necessarily have to have funds in their wallet. You can actually have wallets, Engine wallets that do this. So this means that you can have smart wallets, right, in Engine as well. So if you want to use smart accounts on Engine, you can do that as well through your setup. Very simple. And so outside of Engine, what kind of SDKs do we support? Right? A lot of people come in and ask, well, do you have support for TypeScript? Which we do. We have a full TypeScript SDK. Do you have for React or React Native for mobile development? If you're making games, we have a Unity SDK in Unreal Engine. You can even use .NET in Go, right? If you're working in the Go suite, use our .NET SDK. If you're doing things like you're making Windows applications, again, that's another .NET instance. And so you can see here that we have a wide range of native support for SDKs, and anything that isn't directly supported here, your answer is going to be Engine, right? If you don't see a direct SDK, use Engine, use those fetch API calls, and you can interact with the blockchain at a very, very high level. So what does it look like? Kind of set this stuff up. Again, we went through a little bit on the connect component, right, where you have your client ID. What we're going to do here in this TypeScript one and React is we just want to make sure of a couple things. One, we have something called a Thirdweb provider. If you're making React apps, you know that providers are a way to pass data from parent to child components. And so what we do is we have a Thirdweb provider that does that. All you have to do is ensure that it wraps around your app and you're good to go. We've already gone through how to create a client. You use your client ID that we have on our login page. You're good to go there. And so with some of our SDKs, especially the React ones, we have things like hooks that you guys can use. So if you need things like, hey, how do I get my currently active account? You can use the use active account hook. How do I get my balance? Use active balance hook. All of this is within our docs at thirdweb.com. You can go through our docs from there, or if you want to go to our docs directly, I believe it is portal.thirdweb.com to get to our documentation. Or what that looks like here. So Thirdweb documentation, it's split out into things like, I only want to worry about wallets. I only want to worry about what SDK I'm working in, right? We can do that here. You can click on any of these. For example, TypeScript, it tells you how to get started. It tells you the code. Hey, in your terminal, you do npm i thirdweb, and you can start messing around. You can start creating applications. We do have templates that you guys can use as well for you all. And then one thing that I personally like a lot is that we give quite a bit of GitHub help. So we have things like view on GitHub, so for Unreal, if you want to look at any of these, and it kind of within the GitHub code itself, remember, Thirdweb is open source, and so you can do that. You can click on GitHub, share this tab, you can see all of the code that it took for this SDK, so you can actually go in and look at yourself, mess around with it. You can even make PR requests for this, which is really, really handy. So as a developer on Rootstock who is coming through and looking at all of this, this just gives you another insight on how to use our tooling, which is really, really helpful in some instances. So I'm glad that we do support that kind of access to it. And so I'm going to go ahead and share this tab real quick, go through a demo. I've already talked about all these pieces standalone, right? I've talked about how to connect. I've talked about how to use. I've talked about what it looks like to create a contract, right? So like, what does it look like to put all this together and really from start to end, like, how do I build a simple site? For example, this is a Dino claim, right? Really, really quick. How do we put this together? So one, npx thirdweb create. I mentioned we have templates for you. And if you go into your terminal, into your IDE, type in npx thirdweb create, this is it. It's going to walk you through exactly how to start creating with Thirdweb, and it's going to ask you, do you want to create an app, create a contract, or are you making an extension? Right? And these are for contracts that you guys can utilize. You can create your own extensions. Really cool stuff. A little bit more in depth than what this demo is going to provide. So here we're going to say we want to create an app. It's going to ask you, what do you want to call it? What's the name of your app? What framework do you want to use? I personally prefer Next.js because Vercel comes with free hosting sites services. So as you build on Rootstock, as you build your Rootstock applications and you want a free hosting site, just use Next.js and you can use Vercel along with it for free hosting. Really great tooling there. And then it's going to tell you, okay, once you've created it, here's a list of commands on how to build it out. Here's how to get into your directories. And then a little bit on the setup. Very familiar if you are making Next.js projects. We have a source folder. We have all of our clients, right, which is already built out for you. We have env files that you guys can use, examples that you guys can use to build in your client IDs, put in all of your env information. And then again, we kind of already went through this, but like, what does it look like for the Thirdweb provider and encompassing our app? Just make sure that in our template, if you use our template, it's going to be in the layout.tsx. This is going to be the root of your app. If you're using another kind of layout or template provider, usually it's going to be either an index.tsx or even main.tsx. Again, you don't have to use just our stuff. One of the benefits of Thirdweb is that you're not locked in, right? If you're using Thirdweb, that doesn't mean you have to use only. You can mix and match and use other toolings as you see fit that benefit your use cases. Our tooling, right? The goal is that hey, we're able to do everything within Thirdweb, but if not, that's okay. You guys can actually just do this yourself. And then so, sign-ins on some of these Connect components. If I wanted to create this screen, what does that look like? Where here I have two buttons. One is a Connect wallet for traditional EOAs. One is a social login. What does that look like? So here's the code for that. Again, we have our client ID where we put it in what client we want to work with. Again, this is our front-facing one. And in our Thirdweb playground, if you remember, we actually got this code snippet, right? It was this exact same code snippet with our connect buttons. Here you can see this is our EOA one with this connect one. And then here where we specify what wallets we're bringing in for social logins. This is where we specify another connect button for that social login. So in order to create that beautiful screen, all it takes is this little code snippet, right? Really quick, really simple. And it means that you guys can actually get up and running faster. And you don't need as much help, which is really great. So this connect component, this little code snippet is what generates this kind of component, right? Which we looked through the playground earlier as well. And then this snippet, the social logins, is what generates this kind of login structure, right? Where you can see, okay, I have email addresses, phone numbers, all of my regular social logins, all of this great stuff. And so what does it look like after a user logs in? How do we do things like, let's start interacting. How do I interact with my contracts? How do I have my users look at things like if they want to see their collection that they have, right? So here, we're going to go through a little bit about how to interact with your contracts on Pay. We already went through all this with the contract setup, so I'm going to go ahead and skip through it. And then so here's actually the little bit of code that you need for that button. Again, our components already have all of the information you need. You don't have to create all this stuff yourself. So here we have a claim button. You can specify what contract we're working with, what chain, all of this kind of stuff, what type of contract we're working with, where it's at 1155, 721. And then once we have that, if a user clicks on that button, they'll see their pop-ups in MetaMask. They'll see it if they're doing social logins. They'll just go through, right? And then they can go through that flow. But what if they want to do things like with Pay, right? So here, this is what that looks like in. Very, very similar. The only difference is this section down here, right? Where we specify, hey, what's the metadata that we're looking with? What that does is it gives you a very nice UI up here that you guys can see. Again, we saw this in the playground. This isn't anything new. This is actually showing that you can copy and paste the code from the playground, change it up to what you guys want, and see your own site. So this is the flow that the user will see. Again, we already walked through it. And then what about if a user wants to look at their collection, right? They want to click on this view your Dino button. What does that look like? So here, what we do is we get our contract. Again, very simple. We specify this get contract function, pass in our client, what chain we're working with, what's the address. And then we do one of our extensions, get owned NFTs for that user. And what this is going to do is it's going to look at that contract, look at all the NFTs that user has, and then go ahead and start building out that list of NFTs. So when the user clicks on that button, we actually see their NFT pop up on this list. Again, very simple demo. This is something that anyone can do. You can use that playground to mess around and get started. Use that Rootstock painless page to look at your IDs, RPC URLs, all of that great stuff. That's it for the demo here. Or, we asked earlier, hey, where can you guys see us? Discord.gg/Thirdweb. We're on LinkedIn, Twitter. YouTube is really great for tutorials. We actually have some really awesome people who create really in-depth tutorials on things, on anything and everything that you might be looking at. So NFTs, engine, wallet connects, all of this stuff. YouTube is probably going to be your go-to here. And you can see us on other websites like Twitter or Fragcaster. Yeah, that's kind of the demo there.
That was great. Thanks so much. That was a proper in-depth demo. So many different aspects to cover. Really enjoyed that. Thanks for the walkthrough. Just a couple of quick questions I had from watching your presentation. So there's seems to be that there's a lot of functionality that Thirdweb helps developers aimed at kind of like the end user experience for the end users of those applications. Would you say that that kind of user experience is still one of the biggest challenges that developers still face creating and building those dApps, and that's why you're addressing it?
Yes, absolutely. So, we found that, especially in Web3, right, with any new tech, it's clunky, right? As people start coming out, no one wants to see MetaMask pop-ups all the time. No one wants to see interruptions in their user experience. So you're exactly right. That's why Thirdweb decided, okay, let's focus on a way to get Web2 users. And by Web2 users, we mean Gmail accounts, we mean Facebook accounts, social logins through your regular email and phone number, even passkeys, right? So that's why we focus so hard on that UX. It's because we know that if we want to really onboard users, it's going to be through these login methods. So yeah, absolutely. This is a great way to enable that.
Yeah, 100%. Like we see, those conversations about Web3, like at every single conference. Actually, nice to see. Well, great to see the solutions being built to help solve that problem. What I've also noticed is that there is so much complexity that can be abstracted. And again, you obviously can customize things if you really need to. But like for those who are new and just getting started, there's a lot of complexity that is abstracted through building with the help of Thirdweb. So would you say like a fair portion or a part of Web3 users actually new to Web3 development, and this is their first experience?
Yes. We actually see quite a few individuals who have never developed. We see them come through our support tickets. We see them come through our channels in Discord. They never developed, but they are familiar with Web3 and they want to start, either building a very simple NFT collection, or they have more grand ideas on, drop shipping, or even, building out their own marketplaces. And they use Thirdweb for that, right? We see a lot of Web2 companies do this as well, traditional Web2 companies. One of them was a toy provider that worked with us, and they were actually able to integrate their physical goods with digital assets. So it's a wide range, right? We have people who have never developed using Thirdweb, and we have people who are very, very developer focused using Thirdweb as well. So that's something I think we do very well, is cater to both groups.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. When it comes to Rootstock, and you've covered it, I just wanted to kind of double check before we wrap up. Is Thirdweb available for mainnet and testnet on Rootstock?
Correct. We have both mainnet and testnet available. And one thing that I want to mention here as well is that for any developer who are looking for things like indexer support, we actually have something called Thirdweb Insights that developers can use to read on that blockchain. And Rootstock is going to be one of those chains that developers can use as well. So it's really exciting to, as a developer, look at the tooling out there, and I'm looking at this all-in-one tooling, and I don't have to mess with different providers. I can go to Thirdweb and say, okay, I have ways to connect. I have ways to make my contract. I have ways to read data on chain. And I'm not sure if, we have ways to do end-to-end, right? Gaming, DeFi, any sort of app I want to create, all within Rootstock, all within Thirdweb. So it's great. It's an awesome tool set
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I do believe that's one of the challenges that developers face is actually trying to understand how the full stack works and like all the different components that come into like an application built in for Web3. So yes, to summarize what we've covered today, a very in-depth session. We've looked at how Thirdweb helps across the full stack of Web3 development, so with backend and frontend. We've looked at how to create an account, deploy smart contracts. We also looked at modularity of those smart contracts. We had a look at how to mint an NFT as an example, and also the playground. That was my favorite bit, and you can probably get stuck in there and like explore all the different smart contracts and try to build all sorts of different things. So, and yeah, finally we looked at how to create a project. So thanks so much. Super informative. I really enjoyed the conversation. As a final question to you that I have would be if you were to give one piece of advice to somebody who's just starting with building in with Thirdweb, Web3, what would that be?
Just building with Thirdweb. What's fun is that, hey, don't be afraid. Advice would be like, don't be afraid to break. It's fine, right? Don't be afraid to. You're not gonna do anything that's irreparable or something that we can't help you with. So as you're building your applications with Thirdweb and you have questions, get in touch with us. If you feel like, oh, maybe I broke something, you can't break anything, right? We are open source, so anything that we pull in, we've already looked at as you guys submit PR requests. Don't be afraid to break things. That's how you're gonna get the best and most innovative products. And we're always here to help. Ask us questions either through the Rootstock Discord, through the Thirdweb Discord, through our support tickets at thirdweb.com/support. Yeah, just, my biggest piece of advice is don't be afraid to break stuff.
So love that. Thanks so much. All right. Thanks everyone for joining. If you'd like to learn more, we do have tutorials and guides again on how to build with Thirdweb on Rootstock. So you visit dev.rootstock.io. That's our docs. And also do join our community on Discord and follow us on X, rootstock_.io. Thanks again for joining, Joe, and see you soon.
Thank you for having me.